Hey guys, thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about type 1s, the perfectionists, the reformers, and this is going to be kind of an informal video. Sometimes my videos, I work really hard at editing stuff and making them look great, but not on these. We're just going to take it easy, and this is for you guys that really care about the Enneagram. You want to dig in and just talk about it and think about it. We're going to focus our attention on type 1s. Now, before we get started, just a reminder, I do Enneagram coaching. You can find out more about that and what that is in the description below at my website, tomlahue.com. But, I have appointments with people all over the world, all during the week. And I'd love to talk to you and help you in your life or help you in your relationships. And the Enneagram is a great tool to help us, not only see who we are and who we think we are, but also what growth and development and maturity and all these things, how to improve these, and also relationships. It's amazing how the Enneagram can help us improve our marriage, for example. Okay, well, before we get started in this list, I just want to go back and call your attention back to this book. This is the first book that I read when I started on my Enneagram journey years ago. It's called The Enneagram Made Easy by Renee Barron and Elizabeth Waggle. Since then I've read a ton more books about the Enneagram, but every once in a while, it's good to go back to your roots and see where it all started from. And this book is really good. I have given it away many times, and so this is like my third or fourth copy of this book, and all my notes are gone from when I first learned about the Enneagram. It's really a good introductory book, and I wanted to just, simplify things for a little bit and do a series of just talking about, the best and the worst for each type. And we start with type 1 because it's the first one. And she has a little list here, of ones at their best look like this and ones at their worst look like that. And I thought, well, that might be just interesting, just see what happens. So nothing here is scripted. I don't have any plan. I don't have any grand objective with these videos except you love the Enneagram, I love the Enneagram, so let's just talk about it and see where it leads us, okay? I'm an ENFP and a type 7, if you can't tell. All right, so what does she say about this? She says, ones at their best, remember ones are called the perfectionist, the reformer, the moralist. And we always know, like they say, a lot of shoulds and oughts. They have an inner critic in their head that tells them, like an inner parent that tells them to settle down and do the right thing. They are a, what's the word? Assertive, compliant. They are a compliant type, and that doesn't always mean ones are easy to get along with. That's not what that means. Oh, they're so compliant. That's not what compliant means on the Enneagram. It means this person is focused on doing what needs to be done today. Or you could say it like this: complying their energy to the needs around them, to their environment around them, and making sure that they stay focused on the things that they need to comply with. Now, the alternates would be assertive, like I woke up with this idea and I'm going after that. I don't really want to comply with what needs to be done. I want to go after what I'm interested in. Or withdrawn, I need to get away from this, back up, recover, think about things, or kind of do my own thing in my own world. And that's withdrawn types. By the way, I find that most people that I coach tend to inhabit two of these spaces really well. For example, if you're a one-wing 9, it's probably likely that you're going to be a very compliant person, meaning you comply with all the needs, and then you tend to be withdrawn also. And it might be very hard for you, for example, to be assertive. And once you know what your weak area is, like being assertive, well, then you kind of know what growth is going to start to look like for you. You're going to have to learn to be more assertive because you need all three of these to really be able to interact properly with your world and solve your problems. Okay, so let's look at the list and just talk about it, okay? So ones at their best are ethical. Ethical. Good. I mean, ethics are great. I remember watching a video one time of a speaker who got up to speak at a business seminar. And all week, these businessmen or businesswomen, these business people, business humans, business individuals. All week, they talked about business ethics. And according to business ethics, right? And this speaker got up and talked, and the very first thing he said was, I hate to break it to you people, but there's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. And that's kind of a stinging indictment, right? Because all these people are talking about what's appropriate and inappropriate to do in the business world, like making deals and sales, and how it might be okay to play fast and loose with information in order to accomplish the goal. Business ethics, like they're somehow different than just ethics. And that was the speaker's point, is there's only ethics. In other words, there's only right and wrong. It doesn't change because you're in the world of business, or you're in the world of family, or you're in the world of church. Ethics are just ethics. What's right and what's wrong? And I think that's such a helpful concept to think about, because, the way I understand type 1s, it's not like they believe they're right and everybody else is wrong. It's more like they say that I want to know what's right. I'm interested in understanding what is correct and what is right, and then I comply myself with what I believe is right and wrong. And I don't understand why other people don't make that the priority in their life. Like, why do you think it's okay to be in the wrong? And I think that's a much more compassionate look at type 1s. It's not like I'm right and you're wrong. No, I want to know what's right, and then I align myself with what I believe is right, and I want other people to do that as well. And it's, remember, the sin is anger, right? So it can be very, very frustrating when you see other people like 7s or 8s, for example, who are very dominant, or 3s, very dominant and assertive, and they're not caring about what is ethical to the same degree that you are. Ethics are so important, If you're going to marry somebody, don't you want to marry somebody that has ethics, that has strong ethics, like core convictions? What a great word, core convictions. Just pause there for a second. What are you convicted about? Like, what do you really believe in? Do you have any stable beliefs that, or you don't compromise? Or do you compromise for whatever group that you're talking to? That's such an admirable quality to have. Now, push too far, and that ethical standard could come across as judgmental, right? Just harsh and judgmental, critical, rigid. It could be pushed that far. And that's actually on the list. At their worst, they are judgmental. Look, there's all kinds of words here, and I'm going to have to speed up if we're going to talk about all these. But 1s at their best are ethical, reliable, productive, wise, idealistic, fair, honest, orderly, and self-disciplined. 1s at their worst are judgmental, inflexible, dogmatic, obsessive compulsive. I can be I'm not a 1, but I can be a little obsessive compulsive. Critical of others, overly serious, controlling, anxious, and jealous. All right, so let's go back and look at that list again. Ethical, reliable. Reliable, fantastic. So many people in this world are just not reliable. Like, they don't mean what they say. They tell you that they're really excited about their job and they can't wait to get started, and then after 3 days, they just don't even show up anymore. Not reliable. I remember talking to when we lived up in Kentucky. We live in Daytona Beach, and I love where I live, except every once in a while it seems like it tries to kill you with a hurricane. Somebody told me that living in Florida is like being married to an abusive spouse. They make up for it with all of the sunshine and all of the the beautiful plants and the ocean and but then every once in a while the hurricanes kind of beat you up, and then so it's a little, but whatever. Distractions. Okay. Pray for me. Pray for us sinners in the hour of our need. So, with type 1s though, I was talking to a farmer up in Kentucky. I used to live in Kentucky. That's kind of my other home, Florida, Kentucky. Anyway, long story. But yeah, I'm thinking about the Kentucky accent. It gets cold outside. All right. Anyway, so back when we lived in Kentucky, I remember talking to a horse farmer there who had a lot of employees. He had a lot of people that worked for him, When I say horse farmer, you're probably like, what does that mean? Well, they actually raised horses. Kentucky is known for like horse country, right? And they raised thoroughbreds to run in races. It's a big deal in Kentucky, right? Horse racing. And I remember him saying to me one time, he's like, Tom, I just don't hire kids anymore. I don't even know who to hire because people won't show up to work. They don't show up, and when they show up, half the time they're high or stoned and they don't want to work. And he was just so frustrated because he was like, I don't even know who to hire anymore because I can't find people that want to work. And he wasn't a 1, I don't think. He might have been, but I don't think he was a 1. But I mean, he's just a guy who wants to have a business. But what he finds is I can't hire people because they don't show up. They don't want to work. They're unmotivated, undisciplined. They don't have any like core to them that wants to aspire to something noble or any convictions about being responsible. And I love this about type 1s. That willingness to step up to the plate. I think that's a great phrase for type 1s. Willing to step up to the plate, to back up what you say with action. That very noble, righteous way to be as a person. It's very respectable. It's very attractive. All of us could work on this a little bit. The rest of us that aren't 1s, think of it like that. Imagine that the 1 archetype is sitting at a table with us and just sort of reminding us that we ought to be a little more like that. Like every one of us, should be a little more responsible, should be a little bit more ethical, more productive. And for a 7, that is fantastic wisdom. Like all you guys that are 7s out there, for example, notice we have this line to 1, right? Wouldn't our life be a lot more productive if we could kind of shake hands with type 1 and say, you're right. You're right. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I don't live by the same, value system you do, but you're right. A little bit of what you're saying would really help me to grow as a type 7. It's not just 7s. I mean, 9s, 2s, and 4s, everybody connected to a 1, but really all of us. If we all could just like hear that wisdom and say, you're right. When I say I'm going to do something, I should follow through. When the sign says keep off the grass, I should learn to try to follow these rules, and I should really hold myself to a higher standard. And I think 1s are the epitome of holding yourself to a higher standard. And I would imagine that from their perspective, it's not a higher standard. It's just the standard. And how come the rest of you guys don't acknowledge and respect the standard that is the right standard? And I guess I don't know how to explain that, except I guess I hear another voice in my head that might be a little bit louder. I hear the 1 voice of do the right thing. And by the way, my tri-type is 7-1-2. So, I do have this strong oneness about me, but I guess there's just a stronger voice sometime that is just sort of is louder than the voice of doing the right thing or being appropriate. Like being funny, that's also important, And I realize sometimes I'll make a joke, and my wife, who's a 2-wing 1, like, that's not nice. And what she's implying is not only is it not nice, but maybe it wasn't thoughtful or respectful. And I'm just thinking, I wasn't trying to be thoughtful and respectable and nice. I was trying to be funny. And she's like, well, I would laugh if it was funny. It's a very strong 1-wing, All right, so reliable, productive, and I think 1s and 3s, together would probably create this like productivity mindset. Think like the tri-type 1-3-5 or 5-3-1 or 3-1-5, whatever it is, right? I think it's called like the robot. And you got 3 competency types there, 1, 3, and 5. But all 3 want to prove their competency to themselves and to the world around them. Like I'm a reliable person that gets up and does a hard day's work. And I'm hearing Aaron Tippin in my head. If you guys follow country music, and I'm old, right? I used to listen to country music back in the 90s, and Aaron Tippin was one of the great country music artists back then. I Got It Honest. That's 1 energy right there. Like I may not have everything, I may not have my share of the grand fortunes of life, but whatever I got it honest. And so I can go to bed at night proud of who I am, that I stood for something. That's another one of his songs. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Another Aaron Tippin song. But you can't dismiss the quality of this personality type. You just can't. Productive. Let's get things done. I always think, like, if a 1 could interrupt this video right now and talk to us, they'd probably say, hey, Tom, is this really what you need to be doing right now? Why don't you get out a pad of paper? Why don't you get out a pad of paper and a pen, get your calendar out? I think of 1s and 6s as being like the calendar people. Like, let's get our calendar out. And notice both are compliant, right? Get our calendar out and let's focus on what needs to be done. Let's get those tasks down on paper and then quit making excuses and let's just get busy doing what needs to be done. Think about you 9s, for example. 9s, 7s. I mean, we just want to make excuses sometimes. Like, well, I'd love to get all that done, but I mean, I got to clean my closet. I got to wash my car. I got to finish this season of Walking Dead. I mean, I can't. So the old I sent an email and I'm waiting for them to respond. How long have you been waiting? 2 weeks. They haven't responded in 2 weeks. They're not going to respond. So you better follow this up, right? And some of us are just procrastinators. Actually, sometimes 1s. This is surprising to me. 1s sometimes are procrastinators. I think it might come from either a 9 wing. They might have a very strong 9 wing. And so sometimes 1s can look like 9s. I mean, they can really look like 9s. But then when you get to talking to them about the Enneagram and the types, then they go, oh yeah, no, I'm a 1. Sometimes I think 1s can procrastinate because of perfectionism. Because if you think you can't get it perfect, then maybe you won't try. Or if you're afraid of messing up the interaction, like saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, people thinking you're silly or foolish, or you don't come across the way you want to come across. I can see where 1s might not go have that conversation that needs to be had at work because they're afraid that they might mess it up. And so they might procrastinate. That, when you have to do things perfectly, there's a good chance that maybe you're going to hesitate, and that could keep you from being productive. But I think overall, 1s tend to be very productive people, focused on goals, accomplishing things. And it's never really about themselves. It's not like I need everybody to applaud and know what I did. A lot of times, I've had 1s in my life where they don't want you to ever call attention to them. They've done all this tremendous work, and then you get up in front of the crowd and you say, hey, let's all give it up for Sally. She really came behind the scenes and made all of this happen. We got a prize for you, a gift for you. And Sally's horrified. She doesn't want that kind of spotlight or that attention, right? Because she's not, maybe, for example, a 3. So she's not comfortable with the spotlight being on her and all of this admiration because she's not doing it for that. And that's why the Enneagram is so helpful, because 3s and 1s, they could look alike in a lot of ways, or even 8s and 1s, they could look alike. But at the end of the day, like, 3s probably require and benefit from a lot more admiration, appreciation, validation than 1s. Typically 1s, just a little bit of, hey, thanks, I really appreciated that. Hey, you really came through for us. You saved the day. And keep it sort of mild and toned down. They don't necessarily want it blasted from the rooftops, what they've done, and how appreciative we are for them. They usually don't want that kind of attention for themselves, like maybe some of the other types, 7s, might want. So ethical, reliable, productive, wise. Yeah, a lot of times 1s can look like 5s. Especially the social ones, the subtypes, right? Self-preservation, social, and sexual subtypes. The social 1 is called the owner of the truth. Which, by the way, those are some big shoes to fill. I mean, that moral high ground of, owning the truth. And so this 1 could probably come across like a know-it-all, like a 5, right? And I've known some 1s like that are super, super people, great teachers. They mentor others. They feel a great burden to take other people under their wing and show them a better way. And it doesn't matter whether it's, some kind of religious instruction, Bible studies, or whether it's just fishing or anything. You just walk up to this guy and you say to him, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying a rake." And he's got a lesson for you about why this rake and not that one, and how he used one that was the wrong kind, didn't really do the job. And if you're going to go make sure you get that rake and not this one. It's like, man, teachers, mentors, advocates, and what's the word that it said? Wise. Yeah, wisdom. My grandpa, I think, was a 1. And of course, he died when I was a teenager, but he was always dispelling truth, wisdom, challenging you to be your best self, pulling you aside and always wanting to teach you something. There's something to learn here. There's some moral lesson that we need to stop and pause and think and learn and appreciate from, and great grandpa, that makes a great grandpa. Of course, 7s, I think, could be great grandpa, but I'm biased. All right, so wise, idealistic, right? 7s, 1s, 4s, the 3 idealistic types or frustration types, because, it could be better. And of course, 1s, it could always be better. You guys as 1s, I think you have a tendency to see what's wrong, to see what's inaccurate, to see what's incorrect, and realize like that makes you a great inspector. It makes you a great mechanic. It makes you a great politician. I mean, there's a lot of things that skill is amazing for, but it can make you overbearing too. I mean, imagine if your kids constantly hear how they're being too loud, how they're leaving doors open, how they left the air conditioner running, how they didn't get their room clean, how they didn't get their homework done. They could have gotten an A. That could be very discouraging. Somebody around that kind of perfectionistic way of thinking, if it's not tempered with kindness and thoughtfulness and understanding and love, it could just feel like rules. And rules without a relationship usually leads to rebellion. And I get it. Like, I think from the 1's perspective, like, I love you. That's why I'm trying to correct you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to point out what you could do better. And that's very idealistic, but it can be very disheartening. I mean, you wouldn't want that. You're kind of doing it to yourself all the time. But if I started doing that to you, if I went behind you and everything you did and said and corrected it and pointed out, I mean, you would feel like you're being criticized. And we all know, never criticize a 1. Typically the most critical person on the Enneagram, yet we can't criticize 1s because it's too much for the 1, because they're already so critical of themselves. And so I can see where a lot of parents that are 1s could have some challenges in relating to their kids and the kids to the parents, because it's hard to relate to somebody who's always showing you how you could have done better. It's hard to relate to somebody who's always pointing out what you did wrong. And if you did it right, well, why didn't you do it yesterday? And so it can be very discouraging. And I would imagine that 1s could have some relationship problems. They could have some parenting issues because of your high standards. And you feel very justified, because how can you argue with somebody who's right? When I'm arguing against you and I'm arguing for my preference, that this hotel would be more fun, or this hotel would be more exciting, or is more interesting, and you're arguing that this one is right because it fits in the budget, how do I stand a chance of winning against you? I don't. It's hard to argue with somebody who's right. It's hard to argue with somebody who's correct. It's hard to argue with somebody, and you might think to yourself, well, then why won't they do it the right way? Why won't they be correct? Because we're not all driven by this impulse to be right and correct. I know that sounds crazy, and you're like, well, then you want to be wrong? No, I'm not saying that people want to be wrong. I'm just saying people have different preferences, and their preference might be to color outside the lines a little bit. Just because I want to be authentic to myself, or I want to be true to myself, or I want to be creative. And as soon as you start becoming creative, you're going to start pushing what right and wrong means. And I want to just stop there for a second and remind you that not everything is right and wrong. That's kind of the way you might perceive things, but a lot of things are just preferences. Okay, so think of it like this. Some things in life are sins. They're clearly sins, like abusing people, oppressing people, hurting people, you know, stealing from people, lying to people. Like these are objectively wrong. And how do you know that? Well, let me do it to you. People say, well, you're pushing your religion. Everybody is religious because everybody has these beliefs about what's right and wrong. And so just forget about religion for a second and just let me ask you this question. Whatever you're about to do to somebody else, if I did it to you, would it bother you? And if you say, well, yeah, don't do that to me, don't lie to me, don't steal from me. Okay, well, then you ought to know simply from that this is wrong. But realize that a lot of stuff that creates tension, conflict, and problems in marriages and families and within us is not objectively moral sins or wrong. It's mistakes or preferences. How you load the dishwasher is not a right or wrong issue. How you wash a car, how you clean patio furniture, how you decide to create your garden, how you clean your pool. None of these things are right and wrong. How you paint a wall, how you put dishes away. None of these things are right and wrong. They're all preferences. There's no Bible verse in any religious book that tells you this is the only way to put dishes away. This is the only way to put grapes in a refrigerator. You got to put them in the drawer, the bottom drawer, the produce drawer, not the meat and cheese drawer, and certainly not on a shelf. But this is kind of the way 1's sometimes, I think, and not just 1's, but 1's definitely could get over-focused on this is not the right way to do things. And then the implication is it's wrong. Is it really right and wrong, or is it just your preference or the way you've always done it? And the way you've always done it becomes the rule that everybody has to respect and live by. When in reality, it's just the way you've always done it. And you're dying on sometimes these hills that are just not important. It's just not important. If you could, let me put it this way. If you could let this go sometimes, if you could just relax and recognize everybody has a different way of seeing the world, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day but it does matter because the grapes will. It really doesn't matter. Okay, let me say it to you this way. If you were to write down the big important things that you want for your life, you would probably say, I want to have loving relationships where we're kind to each other and respect each other. We always are there to support and talk to one another and to share hopes, dreams, ideas, blah, 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 right? You'd have this wonderful idea of the kind of relationships you want to have. But look at you in the moment, so impulsed and so controlled by your impulses that you're literally yelling at your daughter or yelling at your wife because they didn't put the grapes away in the refrigerator the way you think is the right way to do it. So let me ask you this. Is yelling at your wife or yelling at your daughter about grapes, is that right? And it's ironic to me sometimes how 1's focused on being right and doing the right thing can often end up at sort of the bottom of this cul-de-sac, doing the wrong thing, speaking the wrong way, trying to reach their high idealistic objective, but completely handling it in an inappropriate way, yelling at their kids in front of other kids, yelling at their teenagers in front of other teenagers, humiliating them, missing the family get-togethers because today's yard work day and I got to be out there cutting grass. I got to be out there. It's Saturday and that's the day I cut grass. Well, what about all the family that came in for your birthday and you're out there cutting grass because it's the right thing to do, teaching everybody that they ought to care about all these responsibilities that need to be done? What about the responsibility to be present to your family? What about the responsibility to take it easy and relax and enjoy each other? You say, Tom, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows that being productive and doing a good day's work is more important than being happy. Okay, fair enough. Or maybe it makes you very happy to do all these things. But let me just ask you this, when you get to a point in your life when you're 40 years old and you don't have any happiness or you don't have any peace in your life and you feel very tense, like tied up in knots and your blood pressure is high and you just, are are like a smokestack ready to explode. When you get to that point in your life where you don't have any happiness in your life, just remember you did not make happiness a priority in your life. That wasn't important to you. What was important to you is being responsible, doing the right thing. And again, I have 100% respect for that. It's just, what would balance look like for you? You probably don't need to get harder on yourself or others. You probably need to lighten up. And you say, I don't feel like you're right. Okay. Remember, if you are a 1, remember this, your personality has a natural connection to 9 and 7. What do 9 and 7 want to say to the 1? Don't worry, be happy. Lighten up. Can't you be positive? Can't you relax? Why does it always have to be so, and then your other wing's a 2, which is like love people and give your heart to people and be open and available to people. And you got this great line to 4 as well. What would 4 tell a 1? That sometimes you got to follow your heart. Oh, follow your heart. That's nonsense. You got to do the right thing. Well, sometimes the right thing is following your heart and being true to yourself and being true to the people that you love and care about. Look, let me just ask you like this. If you're a 1 and you've kind of backed yourself into a cul-de-sac in life, and maybe you don't have those connections with people you used to have, like maybe your family is against you right now, or maybe you feel like you're against your family and everybody's divided, and it's just awful, right? From your family's perspective or your coworkers' perspective, would they appreciate you if you could be a little more 7-like, a little more 9-like, a little more 2-like? Heck yeah. They would probably agree with me and be like, yeah, Bob could really be helped if he could be a little more 7-like, a little more 9-like, a little more Tigger, a little more Winnie the Pooh, a little more gracious, loving and kind, fun-loving, easygoing. You're like, but that's not the way to solve problems. Well, that's not maybe your way to solve problems, but realize there's whole legitimate. Now, this is a concept that might blow your mind if you're a 1. There are 9 legitimate personality types. Yours is 1 of 9. Yeah, but mine's the right one. Mine's the right way to be. Nobody else is focused on being right like I am. There's 9 legitimate personality types. There are 8 other legitimate right ways to be that people live and think and operate under the 8 personality type or under the 9 personality type. And guess what? They somehow make it through this life and live a life and are married and have families and go to work and make a living without seeing the world exactly the same way you see it. But mine's the best way. Okay, maybe not, but I'm just saying there's 8 other personality types, and every one of these is legitimate. They're all real ways that people are wired, and they're very different than you. Okay, what else do we have here? Wise, idealistic, fair, honest, orderly, self-disciplined, all great. Man, I need that list in my life. Look, if you feel like I'm beating you up, I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm actually admiring you and saying, how many times have I said, I need more of this in my life? I need to be more like that. Everybody I meet should be more like that. How could we argue with that? But just realize, again, there's 8 other types. And for example, when I flip over to type 2, where's type 2? Okay, I flip over to type 2 here and I read, the strengths of a type 2 at their best. Loving, caring, adaptable, insightful, generous, enthusiastic. Don't you need to be more like that? I need to be more like that too. And see, part of what learning the Enneagram does is it just reminds you that I need the wisdom of all these other types to help me see my blind spots, where I'm over-focused in life. And I need to start stretching. I need to start stretching into trying to incorporate some of these other. I need to be proud I'm a 7 and be a happy 7 and live for joy and inspiration and live my best life. But I need to realize that 7, that 2 voice, it needs to speak truth into my life. That 1 voice needs to speak some truth into my life, because there's some areas that maybe I've neglected for growth for myself. And then that 1's at their worst, judgmental, inflexible, dogmatic. It's very disheartening when somebody gets angry with you. It just is. And some of us don't know how to respond to that. When somebody just makes this angry face and just says, just get away. Just stop it. I mean, can you see how awful that looks? Look at me. Get on, just stop it. I mean, how does that make you feel? And I realize when ones do that stuff, I get it. They're just kind of showing us what's going on inside them. But just think about how your wife has to feel, or your kids have to feel, or your coworkers. If they can't laugh that off and be like, oh my gosh, Dad's crazy. Oh my gosh, Dad's lost it. Oh my gosh, look, the veins are popping out in his head. Dad's at it. If they can't laugh that off, they're very likely to internalize that. And if they do, they're probably just not going to want to relate to you. They're probably going to create some boundaries and just maybe move away from you. And again, that's not at all what you want. I know you don't want that. You say, but what am I supposed to do? Well, we all have some growth that we need to do, all of us. And if this is a problem for you, then you kind of know some of the areas where you need to grow in. Maybe being more understanding, more kind, more tolerant. And guys, part of this always comes back to learning to laugh at yourself. You don't fix yourself. You catch yourself and you go, oh my gosh, I'm such a one. I was literally just about to yell at my wife because she's putting the dishes in the dishwasher differently than I would. What hope is there for me? Oh my goodness, I'm such a one. See, if you could laugh at yourself and see where your personality, your impulses and compulsions have maybe taken over control, then maybe they wouldn't have to lead you down some roads you don't want to end up in. You might go down some roads that are maybe not easy to come back from, especially in your relationships. Dogmatic. Obsessive compulsive, critical of others, overly serious, controlling, anxious, jealous. I want you to see that's you at your worst. Are any of those good? Is that how you want to be? Is that the way you want to behave? Is that what you want to have said? Is that what needs to be done? No. But realize these are very real potential problems for you as a one. And these are not good. So getting harder on yourself is not the solution here. It's actually the opposite, like learning to 9 and 7, relax a little bit more, laugh at yourself a little bit more, tap into that Jimmy Buffett, response to life. Like, maybe I don't need to do anything here. Maybe I could just let this go. Maybe I don't need to teach somebody this lesson. Maybe they'll figure out on their own. Maybe I need to try to understand other people's perspectives. Maybe I don't need to correct anybody right now. Maybe I don't need to show a better road or a higher way. Maybe sometimes 20% of the time, maybe I should just be quiet. And maybe I should just laugh at myself. And maybe the way it is good enough. And maybe 80% done is good enough. And I can just move on to the next thing. And maybe my impulses and compulsions don't have to control and ruin my life and my relationships. Think about it like this. At your best, you look like a 7. At your best, you look like Jack Black, Dick Van Dyke, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, Jimmy Fallon. At your best, you're lighthearted, fun-loving, excitable, easy to be around. At your best. And you're never going to get there without some help from 9 and 2. They're going to have to help you. And part of 9 is just letting stuff go and knowing when this isn't anything I need to worry about. One of the best books you might read, and I always come back to these books because I love them so much, but one of the best books that you could read is Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. If you are one of these people that gets really worked up and anxious and frustrated, irritated, just go back to Amazon and buy a book from the 90s called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and start there. Like, man, I do sweat the small stuff and I need to let some of this stuff go. If you value your health, your physical health, your mental health, your relationship health, if you value these things, then you don't probably need to get harder on yourself. I'm not trying to push you toward being harder on yourself. The opposite is you could maybe relax this just a little bit and realize that it's okay to laugh. It's okay to cry. It's okay to fail. It's okay to mess up 3 times before you get it right. It's okay to look foolish. It's okay to be humiliated. Like, there's no dragon that's going to blow fire at you if you make a mistake. It feels like it. It feels like there's a dragon chasing you, that if you make a mistake, it's going to blow fire at you. Turn around, face that dragon, and say, you know what? I got to stop. I got to calm down. I got to relax. And enjoy the process. This growth is a process. And enjoy that process, because you're never going to be done recovering and growing, right? We're all in this together. If you want some help, reach out to me. I'd love to work with you. I love you, care about you. I am thankful for every one of you guys that watches this channel, supports the channel. If you need help with your relationships, reach out to me. As soon as you tell me I'm a 1, my wife's a 7, I'm a 1, my wife's a 6, we can get over the target really quickly as to what potentially is going on in your relationship, and then how to recover that and move toward a much better, healthy, loving, compatible relationship. Okay. As always, guys, be present to life. See you next time.